Okay, so we are now ready. Okay. Oh, good evening, everyone. We are ready for our second webinar here at the Vicenza Museum of Jewelry. This is a very special way to communicate with our visitors during the virus. So hello to everyone, and I'm very happy and honored to introduce you Olga Noronha. She is the curator of the future room of the museum. Ciao, Olga.
Ciao, Alba.
We are very happy, and today our webinar will be dedicated to the futures of jewelry. And Olga did really an amazing job as curator of the future room. She has been so visionary, and she's very talented. Olga, let me ask you how to introduce you. Tell us a bit more about your education, about your job, who you are.
Let me just advise some of the people, I think they haven't muted their microphone, so the sound might be interfering with our conversation. Yeah. So before I introduce myself, I think this is the right opportunity for me to try to thank enough, which I don't think it will ever be possible, for such an honorable invitation to join these beautiful and altruist act of doing the Museo del Gioiello webinars, of taking art to people's homes for free without them having to leave the house because of the sad situation the world is at. And above all, thank you ever so much, Professor Capellieri, for the caring and the trust you've deposited on me, on appointing me the curator of the third edition of the Museo del Gioiello, which I've done with all my efforts, love, and caring. Who am I? So my name is Olga. I am a former jewelry designer. I studied for 10 years in London. So I moved to London when I was 17 to do a foundation and a BA in jewelry design. But by the end of my last year of the BA course, I somehow felt the need to investigate what jewelry actually meant for me, in a sense that I was producing many overskilled jewelry pieces that weren't actually to be worn, but were more to reflect or to conceptualize materials or the products themselves. And so I enrolled in an MRes in design and in after a PhD, in which I focused myself on researching and understanding the connection that I had previously made between jewelry, medicine, and art in general, to see how they could be epistemic and how they could provide somehow a perspective of a potential future of jewelry joined to other pragmatical, let's say, practices.
Yeah.
Overall, what is it that I do? I have my own brand, which is very much divided within the product design field, the jewelry design field, and the art creation. So I do develop very frequently a concept which is easily described as wearable sculptures about the body, but not necessarily for the body. And I also keep track on a research and academic career in which I am connected or linked to different universities. And I'm the curator of part of the Museum of Jewelry.
Great. Olga, I consider you as our biggest and most visionary curator. And I think that the future room is really your best destination. So tell us a bit more about your idea of future, especially related with jewelry.
Well, as my area of research is very much set within trans and interdisciplinarity, when thinking about the future room, it was for me crucial to be able to get visitors to, let's say, understand the piece of jewelry or the jewel, rather than a mere or just a fashionable accessory, as a niche for multiple philosophical, technological, socio-political, and historical frames and approaches. And it was within this line of thought that I have planned the future room as a condensed showcase of a series of artworks and pieces that very much span different contexts of expertises. So the future room in itself, as it was prior to be set up, my idea, and I think that's very much what flows within the exhibition in there, is that it not only blends, but it also tries to defy the transition between the disciplines of art, design, science, and body modification, which is very much what I do research on.
Yeah. So an idea of the future related with multidisciplinarity, with intersections between art, design, medicine. But tell us a bit more about the futures of jewelry in relationship, for example, with new technologies and new materials. From your perspective, which will be the jewelry materials and technologies of tomorrow?
Well, maybe the reason why I'm not 100% able, I would say that, to answer to that question, it's because I think that the same way that I anticipate that there will be more and more transition and an intersection between disciplines, that jewelry will not be encased in one or two concepts or sections, let's say, that can be easily categorized or easily fit within materials and technology, but rather it will overcome the material and the production to have meaning. And when I mean about meaning and production, you will see in the presentation, and I will go through, that I have developed or divided the room into 8 different sections in which different sets of artworks are exhibited and explained differently. And I may say, as a kind of introduction, that these sections, as my perspective of the future, may go from MIT produced highly technology devices that are, rather than 3-dimensional, they are subdermal or bidimensional. And it can go until something that one is able to produce in their own kitchen or in their own toilet, with resorting to no precious materials, but rather very interesting techniques that speak critically about sustainability, which is actually something that almost everyone speaks nowadays, apart from the damned virus, of course.
Great. Thank you so much, dear Olga. So we are very curious to see your presentation and to have the possibility to present to our visitors, to our digital visitors, your room at the museum.
Thank you very much. So, while in the sense of trying to introduce, still contextualize very much what will be shown about the visit that I will take you through in the future room, I think it is worth mentioning the fact that it is of common knowledge that adornments such as jewelry have been worn for thousands of years and by virtually every culture ever known. And despite in different places, they have had different significance and times in context, in different geographical contexts. Apologies. So, despite jewels being frequently seen as or worn as wealth and status objects, and concomitantly at times as functional objects and a form of currency, people have throughout times also made the choice to resort to, let's say, a variety of temporary portable and detached ornaments such as accessories and clothing, and also semi-permanent forms of adorning as hair dyes and makeup, no one really settles them within jewelry or accessories, but they're all matters of beautification, in fact. Well, as time passed and there were advances in technologies and particularly science, as you will understand further on, many jewelry affectionates and body adornment affectionates have resorted to permanent markings and alterations on the body, many of the times going through techniques of plastic surgery, tattoos, piercings, branding, implants. These might be surgical implants in terms of silicone implants, or subdermal implants in terms of body modification, which not only sought but still seek not only to enhance appearances, but also to symbolize power, prestige, gender, culture, and to illustrate and confirm devotion for their beliefs. As you can see in the slide that I'm currently showing, human beings have developed contrasting reasons for celebrating the body as Marshallese would state, a ground on which they can inscribe significant meaning. This is a very important sentence that led me to develop the Future Room as it is right now. This is one of the perspectives of the Future Room, and as you're able to see, the exhibition and the pieces that I will show you right after this slide are confined in a very large-scaled time tank, fish tank, as you may want to call it, which very much condenses, defies, and brings transitions on those disciplines that I've spoken about before, which were art, design, body modification, and science. Well, to help visitors understand this, I have deliberately decided to section the room in 8 parts, so that despite the pieces, the artworks in terms of the exhibition, they are not in 8 different parts, so they correlate themselves, they intersect in terms of visual components, materials, and concepts. If the visitor is interested to read and to understand the reason why they are in such exhibition, they can easily refer to these sections. So the first section is called In Between Empty Spaces on the Body. The artworks presented in this section are to be analyzed through a different perspective, as they very much become relevant for exploring the in-between spaces of the human body. Well, these are conceptually driven artworks that focus on exploring sites for thought and for touch, which incite to personal interpretations. I will briefly just go through each of the categories, as we will have more time to show the pieces and to explain.
Thank you, Olga.
Well, very much a pleasure. Well, the second category, it's called, or section, it's called Rehabilitation Therapeutical Jewelry. And this one in particular, which you will understand that is something very intrinsic to me, particularly because of my family background as being doctors. This one sets up a distinction of 2 ideas of body interference, meaning particularly the dissatisfaction with the body and attempts to improve and beautify the impoverished body through aesthetic and or functionality enhancement. These 2 offset with the interference of the broken body that needs to be mended. We then go on into the third section, Intimate and invisible jewelry, the body as the medium and as the message. Well, in here, the artworks explore the turning of one's body into as if a manipulated surface that carries an uncanny equivalence between body and dummy. The inside of the body is somehow looked and represented as a crypt where lies the potential for reshaping one's physicality. Section 4. Added purpose, functional and interactive jewelry. So I'm sure that so far you've been able to see that my perspective of future, and there are 4 missing still, is quite open. And I think that perspective of mine can be easily illustrated by the works that you'll see afterwards. Well, in added purpose, the section presents a few examples of either functional and or interactive objects with either jewelry-like appearances or of jewelry pieces that are functional and that have an added purpose, providing a second meaning for the making of the jewel and making it as if a locus of...
Olga, maybe we can go through the pictures in order that they can show the pieces.
We will go, I have them sectioned afterwards. So, okay, so very quickly, the fifth section is digital jewelry. So as you may understand, it will be about wearable projection-based jewelry and digital techniques. And then we go to what I said before, the fact that we go from high technology to something which is apparently worthless and is made worthy in your kitchen, at home, resorting to and critically speaking about sustainability. Then we go to the 7th, so the before last section called critical jewelry, which raises critical inquiries and political approaches. And we then go into the 8th and last, wearable sculptures and portable art, with, as a resume, very much asks, is jewelry art, or do we keep jewelry in the design field? So going into the first section, in between empty spaces of the body. First image. Even though research on the psychology and evolutionary history of humans regarding body adornment has revealed how the concept of beauty may have derived as a form of communication in culture, jewelry is also a means for personal communication, in a sense of not anymore being just an essential, an accessory, or an addendum. In this case, I am showing you one of the pieces at the museum, Six Finger by Gerd Rothman, where the approach to jewelry becomes as if a glorious extension of the body. Where you see the 6th finger, it conveys a reinvigorated body awareness, emphasizing a peculiar fascination and aspect provided by a connection to medicine, once again, artificial limbs. So one may ask, why is there a space between the fingers, and why is there not a 6th finger in between those last fingers? Yet another piece that is shown within this section is Annika Schmulewitz lip liner. It explores the lips in the context of relationship between the body, adornment, and issues of intimacy. If you think about the line between one's lips, it is as if a disguised fingerprint that distinguishes every human. In fact, lip adornment or lip liner, which was, as you see in the subtitle for Annika, so this is actually the author's mouth, was part of a very large project of lots of lip liners, which defined and identified each person. So no longer fingerprints were ways of identification, but rather the line in between, that space in between lips, was the sense of it. In here, Naomi Filmer's approach to exploring such transition from outside and inside achieves a somehow, let's say, distressing and at the same time alluring visual effect. by presenting an optical amplification, so amplifying the wearer's mouth. In this case, mouth light, which was commissioned by Hussein Chalayan for a fashion show, consisted on a small losange-shaped resin capsule with leads inside, which was placed inside of the wearer's mouth, the model's mouth, and also behind the earlobes, as per illustrating the theme of the overall collection, which was about an imaginary world catastrophe. In here, the red light exudes from the cavity, suggesting danger, shock, and alarm. We now go into, yet again, Jed Rothman's work, one which is particularly tender for me, as I may go ahead and explain it. Well, Gold Under My Fingernails conveys a poetic, in my point of view, narrative in a very physical and literal way. There is actually no longer space for dirt under these fingernails, but rather that space is occupied by pieces of gold as shaped as cut off fingernails. In here, I was reminded, and I believe visitors will also be reminded if they think about it, of how valued should the dirt under one's fingernails be, as it might very well be like my grandfather's, for example, who plants and picks up vegetables for us to eat. So the body and its visualization, the gaps and the folds, the creases and the hidden places in these traces of bodily existence and change can be made visible through peculiar interpretations that take advantage, such as a means for creation. And we go into Zellweger's Body Piece V11. Well, Zellweger's overall work looks at jewelry as a potential to become an integrated component of men in both real and metaphorical way, attaining as if a visceral and experimental narrative through an unconventional discourse. This piece in particular, which I can show you in this coming slide as well, so it is the same, represents a series of work by the artist, which belongs to a group called Body Pieces from 1996, which are about creating fictive body parts that subvert the conventional dialectic between material and meaning, and by being exhibited as, going back, wearable jewelry pieces that are confined within an empty space or in between space, which is an armpit in this case, they are seen as body adornments. But as in here, as a commodity, the polystyrene notionally becomes precious, embodying a discourse about fragility and emotion. Yet, the meticulously mirrored, polished, as you can see, part, which reminds of, for example, a hip replacement, gets us to understand or to see the piece as with no apparent trace of handmade craft, as it looks like a high-tech artifact, which it isn't in case, it's all handmade. So we move on to the second section, rehabilitation and therapeutical jewelry. Well, in this section, I propose that jewelry may have a role far beyond body adornment in the understanding and engaging with the repair of the body, as it appreciates and explores new aesthetic sites and opportunities for linking the body to, let's say, the mind reflecting on the body, and in order to utilize jewelry as repair and therapy. And when I say this, I talk about psychotherapeutically and physically. Well, in this image, you can see a 19th century hearing aid, which was produced in the time and incited by Queen Victoria as a mourning, beautifully and intricately made earring trumpet. The earring rate represented is wrapped in silk, and it's taken, as I said, as a mourning element and fashionable adornment that, despite antique, I believed it was worth mentioning, as it is for me undoubtedly relevant for, let's say, representing some of the most important advancements and advances in medical history for creating customizable medical prostheses.
Olga, this piece is really amazing.
I think it is. I think it is.
So what do you think that during the Victorian age, they established a link between jewelry and body ornaments? I mean,
I'm from, as far as I have studied, which I've studied quite a bit from that, particularly on the very incredible and huge change that jewelry took in terms of color, of aspect, of materials, the introduction of iron and of oxidization in precious materials because of the mourning of Queen Victoria, of course. I think that the fact that this was something that was compulsory, they needed the ear, but then the twist that they made so that it would look like a disguise, because the fact is that more than a fashion accessory or more than something that would fit well with the overall outfit, it was about disguising the deficiency. It was about not showing that actually was.
So your idea for the future is, as in the Victorian period, they transformed an ear trumpet into a piece of jewelry. What do you think? Which one can be in 1 century? One of
No, I think
a functional piece of jewelry from today.
I think that, and that's what I attempt to work in my own projects, I think that functionality will stand side by side with aesthetics. And that as time goes by, practitioners from a lot of different areas will start understanding that the aesthetic pleasure and the aesthetic delight is an absolutely huge gain if attached to the practical object, because it works not only psychotherapeutically in terms of overcoming traumas, for example, in this case, or overcoming and disguising disease, but it also is beauty in the eye of the beholder.
Okay.
This is the reason why I have very much asked for these antique 19th century piece to be presented in the future room, because it was a present in the past.
Definitely.
which we can very easily relate to, rather than this present, we can relate it to the future.
Yeah.
Because the fact is, also in this area, there was a huge development in terms of leg replacements, limb replacements, which were carved out of wood with intricate details placed in iron, and they were customized. So they were made to order, not only to help patients get back their normal motion, but specifically to please the wearer to their aesthetic taste.
Great. What's next?
Well, what do we have next?
Yes.
We have Snowflake. What is Snowflake? Snowflake was designed in 2004 by Ellis Developments in the UK. And as tender as the title that it is, which softens the reason why it was conceived, it is in fact a surgical implant meant to aid in the reconstructive process of a previously shoulder with cancer. So as the patient in question, so this was created actually to be applied surgically, as the patient in question had no need to have a full shoulder implant, John Ellis created Snowflake so as a method, let's say, for attaching the surrounding tissue to the bone so that it would regrow together and it would keep them held all together. Once again, I would say this is a delicately crafted medical addendum, which very easily resembles a crocheted decorative item.
Olga, we have a question from Rosalba, and she asks you if you believe that the future of jewelry will also have a link with what we will wear to defend ourselves or to survive.
Well, I not only think about that, as we go further, there is a section in which I will be presenting Naomi Kisner's, for example, work, which, despite being speculative and discursive, it talks exactly about that. So right. Just a little bit and we'll go through it.
Okay.
So you might not find the author of this work very strange, but this will probably explain the reason why I'm so attached with medicine. Both these images show an item of medically prescribed jewelry. And as an overall contextualization of what this title means, it means the creation of jewelry informed by medical and engineering techniques and procedures, in which the production is not only to beautify, but is actually for medical intent, for medical application. Well, the concept is very much conceived in an hypothetical, let's say, archaeological excavation of the body that goes from exodermal, so at the surface of the skin, into intracorporeal, to the inside of the skin. And it is very much, let's say, organized within, yet again, I love my sections, 5 different sections, 5 different categories. This piece in particular sets within the 4th section called subdermal, so it is under the skin. What is it based off? As an appropriation of the primary objectives of subdermal implants, as in body modification, and also orthopedic knowledge. It is presented in here the possibility for creating and recreating the already existent bone fixation plates towards providing the opportunity for what I feel that is very important, the aesthetic personalization or customization we spoke about in the hearing aids. To be precise, in the anatomical model presented in the picture, which is part of an image of a foot, the plates are designed to be lighter and of lower density, having the main surface built in fine and detailed Portuguese filigree, and still resorting to ready-made surgical screws for its application. Stiffer, the fact is, in terms of medical and engineering notions, stiffer fixation plates may be desirable in certain clinical situations, while in others they can be more rigid and, well, anyway, just to conclude, the image under it's the visualization of the bone plate via X-ray, as it would look like lace inside of the body. And a few years after, if it can be extracted and turned into an earring, a pair of earrings, a bracelet, a pendant, and so on. So there's a double function in here as well. Quickly going into something which is changing, slowly changing the rules and dynamics.
I love this piece, you know.
Changing the dynamics of dentistry. These are medically prescribed, dentistry prescribed crowns, ceramic tooth crowns, which have something very interesting on them called tattoo, which comes from tattoo in teeth. So the same methodology of enameling and tattooing is now applied to external crowns and then inconspicuously located inside of one's mouth. So it is definitely self-satisfaction. And these are images of the Museo del Gioiello that the author produced. So we now go into a 3rd section, and we're running out of time, or not. No, we still have. Well, in this section are exhibited several artworks by authors that showcase a distinctive understanding. And I'll move into the, I don't know what these scratches are, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm making them myself. Okay, so as I was saying, these authors...
So, Olga,
yes.
Right now we are going into a section where jewelry is not more an ornament on the skin, but is inside the body, right?
Yes, and not necessarily.
Okay.
So it transitions, it goes through the layers, but as one will see, more than inside the body and on the body, it is about the marks that it will live on the body. So it's the body itself as the carrier, not of the object, but of the shadow and the presence of the object. So in this image in here, there is a story behind which I find very interesting. In 1975, Peter Skubic had a coin-sized stainless steel plate surgically implanted under the skin of his left arm, which he called jewelry under the skin. Well, the plate was not to be perceived either by the author or the wearer or by audiences, but it was instead in the wearer's consciousness as of those who knew about the procedure. 7 years later, the plate was extracted and placed in the ring that you can see, which is a chest-shaped ring, where the little plate, the coin-sized plate, has since then resided as a relic, sealed and made as intangible as it was when it was inside of the author's arm. Since then, and as a result, what is the remaining and invisible and trace of the jewelry? It is the two scars that remain attesting to the procedure and the performance, and the scars themselves are considered to become the new jewelry that was created by the initial thought and conceptualization of what is actually jewelry. Well, those scars became a locus of the particular memory and meeting place between the inside and the outside, the past 7 years before and the present nowadays, not nowadays, but of course a long time ago, by materially producing and changing and overwriting the site in which they were inscribed. I am very, very happy to have this project as well as in the museum, despite it is shown in images as well. But this is a very interesting project that was developed in the United Kingdom called biojewelry. We're now moving into tissue engineering advances. So the project began as an investigation of potentially implantable technologies that culminated in scaffolding and laboratory scaffolding. The intention was to generate an object that would allow tissue engineering to be regarded in relation to the familiar emotional event. Well, biojewelry concentrated on extracting bone tissue to be seeded, as you see in the image, into a bioactive scaffold, so in vitro, which made cells to divide and rapidly grow, and the resulting tissue, which you can see on the image. So let's see, on the right-hand side, there is, let's see, on the top, there is the scaffolding, the bioactive scaffolding, in which the small sample of bone would regrow. Then on the right-hand side, there is the bone which has grown within the scaffold. And then on the left-hand side, we have the final piece. And what are the final pieces actually? So once the bone regrew on the scaffolding, it was sculpted to become a ring. So basically, in a couple, each side has extracted a bit of bone from themselves, sent it to scaffold to reproduce, and then sculpted to their size or to the other partner's size, a ring as love tokens, as love vows. and they carry, as if say, one's soul and body on their own body. So I believe this is as intimate as it gets, while being not necessarily invisible, but it is very in-depth intimate. And then we go yet to the invisible again. For me, what is more captivating in how these works raise critical questions over the advancements in science and relate to our identities and desires, and also encourage moral and ethical debate around the subject of emotion, is how they can rethink the surfaces of the human body and also physically extend them. We've just seen an example of physically extension of the body. Now we'll be seeing an example of rethinking on the surface of the body. Well, determining the where as the main focus, Giesbacher stresses very much the need to set the individual to determine the form of the object, still reflecting on the function and purpose of the jewel and of the body. And I will go back for a second because this relates exactly to the same piece of work. What you see here is shadow jewelry, a series of gold wires. In particular, this one is the one exhibited in the museum. A very simple loop of gold wire, which is made to be wrapped around different parts of the body. We will see ankles particularly, leading to a material config or rethinking the material configuration of the jewel and how it can disappear, still remaining on the body surface. So what you see in this image is how these gold wires are meant to corrode one's body, leaving a dip mark, as you can see, where now the jewel becomes the body's reaction to the tight placement of that wire. So shadow jewelry becomes the locus for reflection on the individual person as the prime starting point. It's not anymore the material, it is the concept and the shadow of it. Well, here the emphasis is given to how important the relationship between the wearer and the jewel is. And despite not necessarily resulting in functional wearability, the human body is somehow unquestionably the gauge of these designs, being every jewel filled with human values from beliefs and misconceptions, which may be activated when worn. We go now to the fourth section, added purpose, functional and interactive jewelry. Well, not only the physical and tangible aspects of the human body are matters for enhancement and for extension, but so are emotions and experience. And I'm sure it's not the first time that I've spoken about this throughout this presentation. I think someone needs to mute their microphone for a little bit. To enhance expression of emotions by using interactively changing compositions, and that's why we call them, or I've called them, functional and interactive jewelry. Well, in this section, I've displayed examples of functional and or interactive objects, as I said before, with jewel appearances, or the opposite, jewelry pieces that are with a second.
Olgina, we don't have a lot of time.
Okay, I'm running. Okay, first, so Memento is an interactive sound locket for individual reminiscence that triggers a sense of intimacy and values, which invokes also its non-technological predecessor. And then we go to the image that I first presented in I think in the second slide of the presentation. Drawing from the aesthetics found in metallic jewelry like temporary tattoos, as many haute couture brands like Chanel and Dior, for example, have developed in the past years, and as I used to have on my skin as I was a kid. Duo skin is a fabrication process that enables anyone to create customized functional devices that can be attached directly onto their skin. And here are some more examples. The project in itself demonstrates 3 types of on-skin interfaces, enabling users to control their mobile devices, to display information, and to store information in their skin while serving as statements of personal style. So I can have a bidimensional tattoo on my arm that while I touch with my finger, I'm controlling the domotics of my house. I'm turning on and switching off my phone. I'm catching calls and making calls. So we now go into something that, despite looking like a thin, sturdy mechanic and a metallic, bullet pendant, is actually the maximum exponent of what I would call discretion regarding sexual pleasure. It is in fact a necklace, a vibrator, and the client can select from rose gold to 20-karat gold or silver plating, and the client can send it to be engraved with peculiar messages. So the one in the museum is 24-karat gold plated, and for those who are on the outside, they will probably think it is a bullet hanging from their neck, but in fact, there is a purpose added to it, which is in full disguise. And now we go, and this is the point that I can somehow contextualize and respond to the virtual visitor's question about self-defense and future speculative productions of jewelry. So in this case, Naomi Kisner's moves on to a post-humanistic approach that presents jewelry as a means to explore the human body as a resource. So I think I should be answering it soon. So in this case, the work is called Energy Addict's E-Pulse Conductor. It's a part of a discursive and speculative invasive jewelry collection that converts kinetic energy from the body's involuntary movements into electricity. So Naomi Kisner is already predicting the future, maybe. Here is another example of one of the Energy Addict's E-Pulse Conductor. And now, still very interesting, but much simpler example, very, very beautiful and interesting, is Evely Muila hair accessory. So despite not possessing any particular dynamic function, this work very clearly thinks or rethinks how jewelry interacts with the body and vice versa. And I mean, Kim, which is the name of the work, is part of a series of neck pieces that not only stay in the neck, but they also shape the wearer's hair as it wants to be worn. So I'm going to try to go faster.
Yes, Olgina, we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, because it's so fascinating and interesting.
I'm sorry.
But I just want to be sure that you will present to our digital visitors all the magnificent examples you have selected.
I'm not going to go through much detail in this section because I think it's very easy to understand.
Yes. So
and also there is
examples.
Yeah. So in digital jewelry, as it takes from the name, we're speaking about yet again bidimensional jewelry provoked by either an object or a pico projector, as it is the case of Naklumi, which I will ask you to see the short movie that we have in projection in the museum. And in here, I ask people to reflect on, does the future belong to three-dimensional jewelry, or does it actually belong to apps that recreate jewelry on the surface of the body? Will we be ready to forget about the atoms of gold and replace them for the waves of light? Someone is drawing on our skin, on our screen. Necklace reacting to body movement. Reacting to ambient sound. Yet another example.
Olga, we have a question from Manuela asking, dear Olga, do you think it will be possible to have jewels in the future that would affect our brain state?
That would be very dangerous if we use the term effect. But one never knows if an artist or a scientist will come up to a product which looks like a jewelry piece that has electrodes and is impactful in terms of cerebral stimulation. So I think it's an open area for study and for development. Well, in Kyo Kim, yet again, this is a brooch that has light inside, and in darkness, the brooch brings to life what she calls a second skin. In this case, I've put it within digital jewelry, but in fact it has matters of body modification because it is a subdermal implant and also of added purpose. Despite this image just showing a prototype of what will soon become North Star version 2, this is version 1, it is a not so speculative body implant that will also allow to change the color of the skin and to remote control in terms of domotics and via Bluetooth as well. So this is one that would fit in different categories, of course. Let's go to the category of the section that I spoke in the beginning. Homemade from worthless to worthy. Well, quickly saying, durable materials are often used for the production of goods that are typically replaced or thrown away very quickly. And instead in this section, I wanted to focus on apparently ordinary and worthless materials that can be turned into exquisite pieces of aesthetic and emotional value that can not only provoke considerations on materials, but also inquire about the abilities and the conditions that one needs to produce such objects. So with this, I mean, everyone can be a jewelry designer, or everyone can be a jeweler if there are ideas and concepts that are worthy of being produced. And if specifically in this category, if they are willing to risk concepts. These are love tokens made out of Ferrero Rocher wrapper.
Olga, how can these wedding bands can be defined jewelry for a traditional idea of jewelry?
Well, in terms of tradition, the only thing that links them to the concept of jewelry is that they are set within love tokens. They are set within the ritual of exchanging vows through rings. So they are not of gold. They don't have letter inscriptions, but they are of golden foil. And they have, for me, something more intimate, sensual, and emotional than letter inscriptions. They have lips and teeth puckered all the way, which speak about sensuality related to chocolate, which is very easily associated with passion, if not.
Yes, but try to explain to our visitors that think at jewelry in a traditional way, that jewelry in the future will not be related only to precious materials, to decoration,
Yes.
to body ornament?
Yes. Sorry that I didn't go through that before. I think what you just said about not only, the word only is very important here, because I'm not trying to set, and I think no one is actually trying to build up a discussion on what it will effectively be, because it's a very broad stage for interference and for creation. But in fact, preciousness, and I think we've also seen that before, in a sense that when we speak about the marks that are left on the body, we're not talking again about precious materials. We're talking about the concept, we're talking about the meaning and the purpose. And for me, within all these sections, what is the most relevant thing, despite being of incredibly cheap or worthless, as I say, sugar, salt, and wrappers.
Olgina, we have 5 minutes more.
Okay. So yet again, as I said, a lab created on, for example, a kitchen by Gretchen van Helmont, in which she home grows an absolutely stunning and beautiful necklace out of cord dipped in sugar liquid, and then crystallizes into crystals, sugar crystals that remind us of quartz and of diamonds. So the beauty is undeniable, yet the sustainability and the preciousness and the durability of it is subject of discussion. Another example, taking advantage of home achievable materials, salt by Iona Brown. And this is just a juxtaposition that I've wanted to exhibit to relating to the use of minerals and of non-precious materials in terms of religious contexts and of beauty contexts. I myself hold one of these pieces showcased in my small home gallery, let's say that, because in terms of cross context and cross contextualization, I find it very rich. And then the idea that graphite is, this ring is of graphite, the jewelry piece can be the medium for explicitly portraying and drawing and writing emotions, concepts, and further ideas, and for recreating. Yet again, part of this section very much focuses on human hair, the contrasts between repulsion and attraction, and the fact that is a material very often, a mundane and human material, very often related to sad situations in this case. So this piece in particular provides the idea of a peaceful detachment from all the elements in our lives which have a provisional nature. Visually suggesting a dandelion flower, which is the idea. The ring is composed by a pearl in the center, which is encapsulated in a sphere embroidered with the author's hair, picked up on purpose. And as it flies, the seeds are spread and planted to regrow life. This one, which is incredibly delicate and intricate, is by Carrie Halley. And by defamiliarizing human hair, and it's all about human hair, this piece, it generates an harmonious balance between attraction and aversion once again. So by drawing together strings of hair, the artist was able to create elegant and delicate patterns. And we go lastly in this section to Marta Mattsson, whose work is very much about the tension that exists between attraction and repulsion, again, and explores the dichotomy of feelings that can be best provoked through the materials of her choice. In these pieces, so you can see in the back, tourmalines and glass and beetles, they're fossilized beetles, And in here it is calf skin, laser calf skin, to create a beautiful feminine bow. So the materials in themselves brought up from nature, they often disgust people, while her pieces are able to marvel others with their oddities. We go to the before last section, where I present examples of jewelry that are critical message carriers, so political triggers, for example, and they are designed to give origin to discourses on societal behaviors more than anything. This one in particular, as the majority of our visitors, I believe, know, Damien Hirst's work challenges the boundaries between art, science, and popular culture. And his works portray a determined study and publication of the fragility of the human body, very often focusing on pharmaceuticals and their role. So this piece in particular was developed by, in collaboration with Huizenbos. And the pill rosary, which I'm proud enough to say that it was produced on purpose for the museum, consists on a variation of the traditional Catholic chaplet, which irreverently replaces the traditional crucifix, which, with what you see in the bottom, a Hearst monogrammed golden pill that opens and spills up its precious contents, diamonds and rubies. These prescription drugs around the chaplet of Xanax, Vicodin, and Valium are displayed almost as if inside of a temple with no disturbance, and the aesthetic allure of the pills are rendered in such a way that they can almost be viewed as objects of contemplation while carrying the implicit suggestion that their purpose relies in questioning a belief that somehow our suffering can be cured. Is it by jewelry? Is it by pills? Is it by religion? So it is a conversation and a discussion starter. And then we have Stacey Yuang's, we're almost finishing. We have Stacey Yuang's, which, with her recurrent visits to Tesco supermarkets in the UK, she has been able to reflect on how in contemporary society consumption is, the packaging and the merchandising of brands is, and how these have become an international, let's say, language that people from different countries understand, use, and identify themselves. So these pieces that you see in here and the coming one, 3 for 2 and buy one get one free, they're actually all earrings that you can unplug one from another, and then it instead of one piece as it looks in the rack, it's actually 2 or 3 or more pieces, and they are of not noble materials, despite having absolutely impeccable finishings that lead us to think they are. Finally, wearable sculptures and portable art. Well, in this section, it opens up a debate, as I said, of is jewelry art? And I would like to start this section by showing an outstanding piece that, despite beautifully portrayed in the images, it does not fully come through as it does live. So within intimate counterpoints to Louise Bourgeois' familiar large-scale spiral sculptures of coiled aluminium, often seen suspended and in seeming motion, the spiral bracelet, and I will show the image after, as you can see, the spiral bracelet bonds the wearer with the artist through an intense and active embrace. The sense of constant continuation of birth, life, and rebirth seems to be a recurrent theme in Louise Bourgeois' spirals, and it's more than ever represented in an endless natural cycle of control and freedom portrayed in these pieces. Well, these are, in fact, miniaturized sculptures when standing alone, while, despite their size and robustness, the piece is hollow in itself, light and of mesmerizing detail and technique. It can still be worn as an adornment. and we go into Naomi Filmer's Ball in the Small of My Back. So taking this one particularly, taking reference from flamenco dance and Jeanne Arp, the sculpture, Naomi Filmer recreates or creates jewelry that captures space and form and human anatomy. This piece in particular was worn in Alexander McQueen's Spring-Summer 2001 or 2 show. It captures the model's hand positioned behind her back. While the object both dominates the model's posture and celebrates the form of the body, but in exhibition in the museum, it is a standalone piece, and it very often leads visitors to question the purpose and to sometimes refer to it as an intriguing vessel for the unknown.
Olga, Alessio, he wants to ask you, which is the total weight of the Naomi piece, if it's too heavy or not?
It isn't light. I'm not fully, I don't think it says, no, we only have dimensions on the presentation. I'm not aware of the actual weight, but it is, because it is of traditionally blown glass and electroformed metal, it is quite heavy. But as far as I've heard from the wearing of it, it is anatomically comfortable and sturdy. So we have 3 pieces left. In Animal, the Other Side of the Evolution, and Anna Rachevich speaks about the concepts of mutation and evolution in order to develop contemporary cross-image of human and animal, and a temporal, let's say, that supreme creature beyond past and future. These pieces in the images are very often shown in models and in mannequins, as we also chose to have it in the museum. However, they are very often also showcased as artifacts that speak about what I've just spoken about. Camille Moncomble, Lacrima. Here, the preciousness of the tears come into question, very easily identifiable, I believe. It is an object of adornment that underlies the eyes, while it evokes masks from Commedia dell'arte. I think I've said it, I hope, suggesting ingenuity, naivety, and disguise. Yet it's not, again, a piece with a particular purpose, and it is a very delicate and small but very intriguing piece of sculpture that can be placed onto the body. And finally, speaking directly into painting and into art, I would like to say a citation just to finish, which says, "Everything which we have loved is lost. We are in a desert. Before us is nothing but a black square on a white background." And this is by Kazimir Malevich. In this piece is shown Circle, a reinterpretation and appropriation of Malevich's aesthetics, and is taken to a different context. It is about duplicity. The black circle that you are able to see in the images is part on the left-hand side of a frame where one does not recognize it as a jewel yet, but after removing it, on the right-hand side, the circle does not aim to portray a line with no beginning or no end, but rather a black hole of infinity that either entices to meditation or a need for escape, let's say that. So when it transitions into the body, it is a magnetic brooch that leaves a wall and a canvas to get the body to be its new medium. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Olga. We enjoyed it a lot. And you definitely present to us an amazing galleries and visions about the future of jewelry. I am sure that the traditional idea of jewelry will persist in the future, including the preciousness of the materials, the preciousness of the handmade. But I think it's fascinating, and your view, your visionary view, is really amazing, especially compared with the masterpieces of high jewelry we include in the museum. So another demonstration that jewelry is inclusive, that jewelry requires different perspectives. Last week we had Christina mentioning and presenting as old and ancient amulets and talismans. Today, your wonderful presentation about the future. Next Tuesday, Livia and I will present the relationship between jewelry and design. And the title will be Design is Not Drawing. So thanks so much, dear Olga, for your passion, for your curiosity, for your visions. And thanks a lot to all the museum team for assisting us. And of course, thanks a lot to all our digital visitors. Thanks a lot for being with us. And we look forward to meeting you next Tuesday for the design webinar. So,
can I just have a final thing?
Sure.
So I just want to thank, if they're listening to us, all the institutions and the artists that trusted me to borrow their pieces, to interpret and write about them and speak about them. And I also hope that this virtual visit triggered the will of you to go and see the museum whenever you can.
And we wait for them.
Yes.
So thanks to everyone and see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
The webinar on design will be in Italian. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know how to stop sharing this.